I say, okay, well, like you said, what are the facts, or is that even happening? And I come back and I take a few deep breaths. And something as simple as that, I feel like has helped me through stressful periods.
Well, welcome back to the Faculty Factory podcast. I'm Kim Skorupski, and I'm here with Dr. Neda Gould, a frequent flyer to the Faculty Factory podcast. If you are new to the podcast, you're going to want to check out Dr. Gould's prior episodes with us, number 61 and 62, because they both launched or dropped around March 2020 when you know what happened. So Dr. Neda Gould in her first episode talked about COVID tips about uncertainty and anxiety and uncertain times and coping strategies. It was a really, really great, timely podcast to help us kind of bear up and get prepared for what was happening. And a couple of comments are quotes that I wrote down in my notes that might pique your interest to go back and look at episode numbers, listen to episode number 61 was Neda reminded us about facts. Don't add additional stories. Note the facts and drop the story, which I love. And she noted that also that maybe summer camps and summer events and summer programs were going to be closed, but nature was still open. Mm-hmm. So the camps are closed, but nature was open. And so she reminded us to look for those opportunities that still existed despite some things being taken from us, what was still available to us. And I love that. And then in episode 62, she actually did a guided meditation for us to help us cultivate awareness and self-care and being mindful of what's, what grounds us and keeping us centered, because Dr. Neda Gould is the director of mindfulness program at Johns Hopkins. So Neda, why don't you start off by telling everybody your title and what you do, all your roles here at Hopkins?
Sure. Thanks so much, Kim. And for those refreshers, it's so nice to be here. And I can't believe it's been 2 years since you and I have chatted. So yeah, as my roles as the director of mindfulness, I basically spend a lot of time running mindfulness-based stress reduction group for patients on the one hand that are referred through the community and through different providers within Hopkins, and then for faculty and staff on the other hand. And so what that normally looks like, the MBSR program, Mindfulness-Based Stress Reduction, is a internationally offered program. I happen to be certified in it and offer it here at Hopkins. And we meet for 2.5 hours in person and then a full day silent retreat. So we meet for 2.5 hours in person for 8 weeks. And since the pandemic hit, I've been running these courses virtually. And so I've truncated them a little bit because that's a long time to sit behind Zoom. But so I've spent a lot of my time doing these groups in different ways, and I've modified them. And then the other hat that I wear is as a cognitive behavioral therapist. So I see a lot of individuals with depression and anxiety. Again, sometimes those are patients referred through internally or externally, and then sometimes those are faculty and staff with whom I meet. So it's been a busy time. There's been a huge need for mental health services, but I've been happy that I've been able to continue despite some of the pandemic shifts.
Mm-hmm. Well, we are very, very fortunate here at Hopkins to have you. And I benefited from the MBSR course with you with a colleague of mine, and I found it really, really important. I still reflect on the practices. I still remember you and all you taught us, and the breathing exercises, and just the basic tenets of like releasing all judgment. That has stuck with me. So the way you designed the course was really, I thought, it was a good reminder. And it wasn't one of these, I sometimes feel like in the workshops and the courses we do at Office of Faculty Development, they're so brief and short and you can only skirt the top. And so I liked how you would set up the course, as you said, in the length of time with the same small group of people for several weeks. And then that silent retreat day it seemed like a lot when I remember when I signed up for it. But then as I got into it, I realized how important that was to have all those components and how at the end of it buttoned it up nicely. And that's why I think it has this stick-to-itiveness that I feel, because it wasn't just what was that whole thing about? It was consistent, the materials, the exercises, the practices. It stuck with me. So I highly recommend mindfulness exercises and practices. So thank you for all you do for faculty here at Hopkins and for our patients and our staff. We need you, and we're really blessed to have had you, especially when the pandemic hit. I know you're really close, like hopefully a minute now, you're going to been promoted to associate professor. So kudos in advance to that.
Thank you. Thank you.
So, this will be, your third time in the podcast, and you've been through a lot in these past 2 years. I know you wanted to share some personal experiences and thoughts and some lessons learned, and then something along your career that you could share with other faculty members.
Sure.
Signals or things you're seeing that leaders might want to hear or need to be reminded about. So let's take it away, Neda.
Yeah. So I was thinking back to 2 years ago when we had the podcast. I remember exactly where I was sitting. The pandemic had just hit, and I, on behalf of kind of our department, was running mindfulness sessions for faculty and staff 3 times a day at 8 o'clock and noon and 5 o'clock, and for 30 minutes. And I did that for, I don't know, a very, very long time. I just ended doing the 30-minute sessions. I had tapered down, but just ended after 2 years. But I remember sitting down in the basement and trying to find a quiet space with the kids, trying to homeschool, my husband working, and thinking, oh my gosh, like, I don't know how much longer I can do this. And so the mindfulness, I think, I'd like to practice it more than I do, even as a director of mindfulness, but really, I think helped me through this process in some ways. Of course, things externally have improved, like with the pandemic getting better and people returning to work, kids returning back to school. But the mindfulness, I think, on a personal level is something I really keep going to. And I always share with people, I hope that you have your own self-care tools, and that it doesn't have to be mindfulness, and it doesn't have to be a 8-week class where you meet for 2.5 hours. But, this can be integrated into the day. So I'll notice that when I get stressed out, I notice, well, I'm usually just thinking about something really stressful. And so I say, okay, well, like you said, what are the facts, or is that even happening? And I come back and I take a few deep breaths, and something as simple as that, I feel like, has helped me through stressful periods through the pandemic, and is a tool I would recommend.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. And people have, shared with us on this podcast various self-care tools, exercise and hydration and sleep and stretching and yoga and prayer and whatever, works with you and you need. I discovered something new that I, through the pandemic and being at home, was I'm an exercise buff and I'm a gym rat. So exercise has never been something that I feel like I must do. I have to do it because I love it so much. It's like when people say, are you going to exercise? I think it's like asking me, am I going to brush my teeth today? It's a no-brainer. What I never really realized was how much during the day when I was in the traditional office, 10 hours a day, and I just be motoring through the day and just go, meeting. And I would be sometimes, power walking to the next building or 5 blocks down for that meeting or that presentation. It was constant go. What I've noticed now since I've been at home is I will have this disjointed work life. It's like, I was just reading something about just peaks of life. We do a lot of work. When you work at home, you kind of just integrate life with work. So when I have a period that it's empty for like an hour and a half, I'll just get up, take the dog and go outside. Mm-hmm. And what I never used to do that, even when people would suggest, get up from your office, your desk, after every every hour, 10 minutes, do this. And I'm like, I don't have time to do that. Or, we all just kind of eat at your desk. And I never walked. First of all, I was wearing high heels and I didn't really want to get all sweaty. I'm like, I'm not going to walk at work. I walk now every day. And what I find doing is, I get so many ideas and these ahas come to me when I'm walking. And I'm not purposely saying, okay, come on, doggo, let's start walking because I need to think of an idea about how to fix problem A or Z. All of a sudden, my mind, things kind of click. And I think maybe it's this thing called oxygen. I don't know what it is. Physically moving my body and breathing.
Yeah.
And that has really, I feel like, made me even more creative and solve problems for me. So that is one of a new self-care tool that I never recognized, that the physical moving during the day versus sitting has really opened up my mind, and things have fallen into place more easily than when I was back in the olden days. That's something that I've
Yeah, I love that you said that, and I've had that experience myself, and it's almost like sometimes finding the best solutions to problems is to stop thinking about the problems and to completely shift your focus and getting outside, doing something new. It's like, resetting ourselves. And, I meet with a lot of faculty who are stressed and burnt out. And I think that they don't feel permission to take breaks. And part of that is self-inflicted, especially in a place like Hopkins, where, you go, and it's never enough. And so you feel guilty if you stop. And it's the personalities of individuals who are attracted to this type of work and this type of environment. And that interplay can certainly lead to burnout. And I think, I really try to encourage patients, please take 5 minutes twice today. Leave your desk, go do something, close your eyes, because this just isn't sustainable. And if the price you're going to pay is to leave or quit your profession or burn out, then can we spare 10 minutes over the course of the day? And I think that that's an important message for everybody, but also then for leaders to model that and to give that permission as well, because I think, that's where we need to hear it come from. That, I want you guys to take a lunch break. Can you do that once a week? And that permission, I think, is so important if people don't give it to themselves, and for someone else to give it to them.
Well, thank you, Neda, for reminding us and as leaders to model that behavior, because you're so right. It's one thing to say, take time you need. I trust you. You have the tools to do your job. You do your job whenever you want. You have to take care of yourself. It's really important. We value you. It's one thing to have all those words flopping out of your face. It's another thing to literally, as you're saying, model that. So that kind of stamps of approval of like, well, no, he's not just saying that. He's actually doing it. Well, he takes his kid to soccer practice, or she goes and gets a manicure once a month, or, she goes and takes, a gym class at 10:30 to 12.
Right.
So, and that's not on the down low. It's on the calendar. It's on her calendar. Or she tells people, no, I'd love to chat with you now, but I'm late for yoga.
Right.
Yoga, it's the middle of the day. Yeah. And guess who will be on the emails tonight at 9:00 p.m. So that's the different way of thinking about work, that we're no longer, punching the clock at, 9 to 5. It's that work is so completely enmeshed in life. And because it is, and we're so available and make ourselves available because of our devices 24/7, it's only fair then that we make our life available 24/7.
Yeah.
That we we've allowed
Yeah.
to bleed in. We got to have to also then, you can't have the blood. Here's the scientist, the physicians, clinicians can be like, wait, you can't have the blood going one way. Actually, no, it has to go both ways. If we're going to let work bleed into life, we have to allow life to bleed into work. So
Yeah,
love that
right.
you called that out. Thank you, Neda.
Yeah. And, it made me think, like, here's our novel idea. Could the leader even go out to lunch with some of these individuals to really kind of model that in vivo? And, I think to the elementary schools where I am, that they have this idea called a lunch bunch, that you earn a lunch basically with a teacher of your choice, and the kids just love that. And I think it, why we can learn so much from the children, right? That they take these breaks. The other thing that came to mind as we were talking about this was also one thing I'm trying to really do, or I've tried to do over the past couple of years, is to set some boundaries. And I've been doing that by learning how to say no. I didn't realize how challenging that was for me, and that my instinct, as soon as I get an email with a request, is to say, sure. And one, it's easier than to say no. Everyone's happy in the moment. And then I started realizing, oh my gosh, look at my calendar. And, I can't be a good clinician, or, a mother, or a wife, if I'm so burnt out. And is anyone at the end of the day going to notice if I see one less patient and spend, that time catching up on notes, so I'm not doing it at midnight? So I think that learning to say no is it's something I really continually have to practice, but it's so important.
Well, that is another great point. And I'm glad you brought that up. So let's kind of get into that, because it seems so simple, like so many things. Take a walk, get some sleep, go to lunch. These things seem so easy, and yet we struggle with them. And I tell people all the time, and we've had episodes on the podcast, no is a complete sentence. And when you start, if you don't say no in some things, you're going to start saying no to very important things, because you can't say yes to important things if you're saying yes to everything. So all the others like little quippy sayings, but let's break this down. Let's walk somebody out there through it who's saying, like you just said, I'm not going to be perceived as a team player. I'm trying to get promoted. I'm the junior person on this team. I don't have the right to say no. I'm trying to build a career here. What if I never get this opportunity again? People will be mad at me. All these things, these stories and facts, as you talked about last time, that we think, we make assumptions about what will happen when we say no. Can you give us a scenario or two of you work with faculty? How do we actually do it? How do we practice?
Yeah. I can tell you how I've been practicing in it. And I think it is a skill. I think some people are better at it than others, and it feels uncomfortable, just like whenever we learn some new skills, but that it gets easier. And so I can give you an example. So I get a lot of requests to see patients. They come from everywhere. And normally I do whatever I can, even sometimes I have to see them on weekends, since we've gone virtually, to say yes. And what I've started to say is, thank you for thinking of me. I've noticed that I can't provide the care that I'd like to with, if I take this on, or be the X person or the X researcher that I'd like to if I add this to my plate right now. So I can't do this. And so I think that it's softer and kinder and truthful. And so the person, I think, on the other end can understand. But then I always provide other resources. So, hey, or another person's name who they could reach out to and check and say, I don't know their availability, but you might want to check with X, Y, and Z. And so then there's a plan of action, and it feels better on my end. And I feel like I'm still being helpful.
Got it. That's good when we're dealing with the guilt, like you said, because we enter this profession as givers and servers, and we want to make a difference. And so it's unnatural for us to say when our whole lives we've been trained to and enjoy the challenges. But you're right, that kind of is this mission centric. And what we do, as you know, in the Office of Faculty Development through our leadership programs and all of our various seminars and workshops and coaching and mentoring sessions, we try to always remind each other to be mindful of what is your mission and is this mission centric? And do you have a mentor? And can you buy some time and space to say, thank you for this opportunity. Let me think about it. I'm going to run this by, Dr. Neda Gould, my mentor, and I'll be back with you by close of Friday or by noon on Thursday. I'll let you know. And that at least gives some emotional distance from, do I really want to do this? Is this aligned with my mission? Is it important? Do I have the time and resources to do this? And as you said, Ned, and rightly so, do the job I want to do, because we're all perfectionists. So yeah, I could do it, but am I going to bring my A game, my B game, or my C game? And how will I feel about that? So I think I love how you said, buying some time, but then maybe saying, I can't in good conscience, this will not be my best effort at this moment in time, maybe later, or how about this person, that person? So at least the person's not going, oh, she said no, and just said no, complete sentence, period, and then reply like that was rude. But the delivery is a softer, as you nicely said, softer, thank you, no, and how about this person? So that you're giving them options. So I think that's a really good strategy. What happens? What do you see happening when it goes wrong? When faculty say, "I'm going to do that," or how do they mess up the no?
I think it could be something like, no, I can't do that now, but check in with me later. And then they check in with them later. But the answer you really wanted it to be a no, but you gave them an out. And so the person on the other end doesn't understand, they don't know. They're just reading what's there. How else does it go awry? I'll have to think of some personal.
I love that. Check back later. You said check back later. Yeah, but I didn't really mean it. That's polite thing. Like, hey, how you doing? I didn't really want to hear all the details of your latest gastrointestinal.
Sometimes the challenge becomes on the other end when I'll say no to something, but then the person may come back and say, okay, I understand you can't do that. Could you do this? And sometimes that's fine and it works, but sometimes it's like, no, I can't do that either. And so
it's still required. You're missing the point. Maybe the point. Also, maybe the point is the no that we craft has to be direct, and instead of implying that I'm busy, simply saying I literally have no space on my calendar for the next 15, 16 weeks. So maybe this month that will free up, or no, I don't have resources to do that. Well, how about that? No, I don't have resources to do that either. Let me be clear. I have no resources. So I think your point, what I'm hearing is that we have to be clear in our communications and not making assumptions that people will read between the lines or read our minds. And being, as you said, setting boundaries and being firm, respectful, but firm.
Right, exactly. So, what you describe is assertive communication, and that too is a skill that we have to learn. Some people are just naturally more assertive than others, but, we may begin to notice some patterns of communication. Are we passive? Are we passive aggressive? Are we aggressive? Can we aspire to be assertive where we're clear and concise and we're respectful in the way we convey our message, but we're also respectful of our own needs and where we are and what boundaries we're setting. And that requires practice.
Neda, help me or help us think through when we are saying no to a boss, like in high. So now I'm reflecting on a personal experience where one of my mentors higher up in the dean chain than I am, said, hey, Kim, I want you to, there's this initiative and this project, And I'm like, oh gosh, really, I'm kind of swamped right now doing A, B, and C. This actually, this sounds like it's more appropriate. This should go to person person Z, not me. And then she replied back, yeah, but I like working with you. You get things done, and I really hope you reconsider this. And I'm like, to me, it was kind of like, but it's going to create some problems. Can't you imagine? Because this person, that is what they do. And there might be, and it was kind of this back and forth. And then it was like, well, I could tell she was disappointed. And so that kind of brings me back to the feeling of guilt, but then thinking, I'm not responsible for other people's feelings. Maybe, putting your psychologist hat on.
Yeah. You're right. You can't predict how other people will feel, especially in the context of if you're being kind and respectful. I don't know if I shared this last time, but one thing I always share in my talks, a slide I always share in my talks is something I picked up at a silent retreat once. There's a great meditation teacher, and her name was Mary Aubrey, and she shared this acronym of, can you make your speech King Tut, which was the K stood for kind. The ING doesn't stand for anything. And then tut, truthful, useful, and timely. So, I bring that to mind. So can your speech be kind, truthful, useful, and timely? And if it is, then, you're not intentionally trying to, hurt the other person or make them feel bad. And you can't control how they feel. I think it adds another dynamic when that person is your superior. And that's happened to me. And most of the time I had never said no, except when I realized, oh my gosh, I'm losing my mind. I can't take on one more thing. And so I did as I did the same thing as you had mentioned, that I kind of was clear and concise and said, I'd really like to help out. Is there a possibility to explore a different alternative here? Because I'm feeling really overburdened. Here are some people I work with who may be interested in the project and may be a better fit. And the person took it fine and said, sure, let's find a different option. And I had to sit with all of those thoughts and stories. And that's what on a personal level, that's what I had to get comfortable. Oh, they're mad at me. They think I'm not a team player. I should be able to do this. I should be able to add one more thing. It would feel so good to be able to say yes. And I had to say, yep, all of those things are true. And if I want to not burn out and leave this institution, then I'm going to say no to this one little thing.
And I love, Neda, that you say that word should. Every time I hear the word should, I'm starting to bristle more and more and more. And I tend to, when I coach, I remind people, are you saying should? And is someone telling you should? And that to me is always it's a trigger word, because people, what you should do. And I always think, oh, please do tell me what I should do. And I kind of get defensive, because to me, that implies I'm not doing something I should be doing. And that I get very defensive about the word should, and I should myself.
Right.
All should. I should have 200 publications. I should have 50 RO1s. I should 20 pounds. I should eat vegetables. I should. And all that shoulding of ourselves is so heavy. And so they should, and mentors and colleagues and peers and reviewers say should, I feel like we have to be really careful about what that means and what their motivation is. And I'm not saying all shoulds are bad. Yeah, maybe I should stop drinking. Maybe I should stop. Maybe I should stop, being a bad guy and stabby. And should stop being all stabby. So, and also be careful of, do I really? That's kind of making an assumption. And I think the other, on behalf of, or putting myself in the role of my leaders and people who are getting told no, is maybe, in all fairness, they don't know. They think you want to do this because they're all like, oh, I'd love to. Happy to help you. Absolutely. Sure. Count me in. I'm a team player. Our enthusiasm, our innate curiosity, and because we're all scientists and we want to know and learn and help and be of value, that can be sometimes mistakenly construed as, not only is she good at it, will she produce for me, but Neda wants to do this stuff. So I think sometimes that miscommunication, or we're thinking, well, why does she or he keep asking me to do this? Wow, what a jerk. And they may be thinking, well, I'm giving Neda an opportunity to do this stuff. I thought she wanted to do this. She's so good at it. She likes it. And in fact, no, I'm done with that. I
Mm-hmm.
don't like it. I was doing it as a whatever. So that gets back to, as you mentioned, honest, authentic communication and testing our assumptions that we have.
Mm-hmm. That's so true. And yeah, as psychologists, as you were saying that, we have a saying that I'm shooting all over myself.
I didn't know that one. I'm
Yeah.
all over myself.
Yeah. So, and it's so true. And just yesterday, I was meeting with a faculty member, and the comment was, I said, what were you thinking? And what were you thinking when this happened? And she said, I just was thinking I should be able to do this. And I said, well, how does it make you feel when you think like that? She says, well, I feel horrible about myself. And so even taking that, when you start catching those shoulds and saying to yourself, well, what's a different way that I could talk to myself and say, it would be nice if I took this on, but right now I don't feel like I can. Just that one word and shifting, that sentence and reframing it can make us not feel so horrible. And that's kind of the premise behind cognitive behavioral therapy, is that our thoughts impact how we feel. And so if we can make some changes begin to catch our thinking, first of all, and what's helpful and what's not helpful, and then to just make slight changes, even that can impact our mood.
Oh, I love it, Neda. That's so, so, so good. I love I'm shooting all over myself. And the King Tut, kind, truthful, useful, timely. King Tut. Such great reminders.
Yeah, I use the King Tut when I feel triggered, and like I get an email that doesn't seem nice, or someone said something that makes me feel irritated. Then I just pause and I say, is what I'm going to say King Tut? And often the answer is no in those moments. And so then I don't send the email, or I step away and I'll say, let's talk about this later. And that has really saved me from some I think what would have turned into some very challenging discussions.
It's funny. I'm laughing because you're reminding me from my Bible study time. We had, is it kind, is it necessary, and is it true, regarding gossip. So we were talking about, is it kind, necessary, true? And you have in King Tut, kind, truthful, useful, timely. And I'm thinking, when I looked at kind, necessary, true, it's necessary and it's the truth. And it's useful and it's timely. But guess what? In both of those, it's not kind. It's that gets me every time. Why does kindness have to be in there? Because I'm like, but she needs to hear that. That is true.
Yeah.
It's necessary. Yeah. And it is useful. But fine.
But 3 out of 4 isn't bad.
Oh, gosh. Oh, wow. Well, Neda, any other little pearls or pieces of wisdom that you can drop out there in addition to all this wonderful stuff, or just for us?
Yeah. A lot of people ask me this question, like, how do I make time for the mindfulness practices, and insert in the mindfulness practices any instead of mindfulness practices, any self-care tools. And going back to this idea of, I know who I am, and then I know the people at Hopkins and the culture here, and saying, I just don't have time. And a couple of things come to mind. One, that self-care doesn't have to be an hour of meditation or an hour at the gym. That literally look for 1 minute to start, and that's 1 minute more of kind of being able to reset and decompress. And then the next week, can you build it up to 2 minutes? If you need to start that small, that's perfectly fine. And then the other thing I say to myself is, I say, well, if I'm not going to do this for myself because I feel too guilty, then can I do it for the people I love in my life? Can I do this so that I'm less irritable? I'm going to, not snap and express my frustration. I have more tolerance when I'm with the kids, be more present. And so those two things have helped me. And then the third thing is, can I find any kindness towards myself? That's so, like you said, it's one of those things where it's like, well, duh, be nice to yourself. But it's so hard to do, that we're so incredibly self-critical. And can I say one nice thing to myself today, or forgive myself for one thing? And I think that, that can be helpful. And the reason I I love working with faculty so much, especially at Hopkins, is because I can relate so much to the experiences and to this experience of being like, self-critical and saying I don't have any time to do this, and just having had to learn ways to work around that, both as a psychologist, professionally, but then also just personally to improve my quality of life.
Oh, no. It's so beautiful. And the two things that came into my mind was how you, I try to think of like, we've all heard before, think of, would you tell your best friend, if your best friend were talking like this, would you allow him or her to say that? Or would you say like, what are you doing? Like, you be kind and loving and supportive and forgiving of that person. So treat yourself like you treat a best friend. Why are we so horrible and awful to ourselves? And then you reminded me, I recently had my annual physical exam with my Dr. Mary Newman, my wonderful GP. And as we're leaving, she's like, Kim, love your body. And I turned around, looked at her like, I had the crunchy look. I said, love my body. Just love your body. And I thought, oh, but I hate my body. And it really kind of like smacked me in the face of, and obviously it stuck with me because I don't remember anything else she told me, but Kim, love your body. And that's something that I think that we don't do, is we don't love ourselves because we're so hypercritical, and it's never good enough. We're never doing enough. And so hence the shooting all over ourselves.
Yeah. What a beautiful thing for a physician to say, not something you often hear them say, but what a nice thing. And so true that, we are our worst critics and so unforgiving of ourselves. And I think that's where gratitude practice can also be helpful, is to say, yeah, okay, well, maybe I wish that, I did this or looked like this, but then we can say, well, what am I grateful for? And we forget the things that, often in the psychology world, we talk about this negativity bias, that the brain is going to focus on the negative. If you look amazing, you're going to find that one teeny tiny flaw. And we have to override that. And we can override it with a positive self-talk. We can override it with mindfulness practices where we get some distance from those experiences. And we can override it with gratitude practices of, oh, well, wow, like I can still walk or run, or look how amazingly I cut these onions and my fingers work so well, whatever the situation is.
Yes. And it takes a minute, like you said. It doesn't take hours of, I don't have time to do that. Really, the time it takes you to breathe in and breathe out, inhale, exhale, boom. That doesn't take a lot. And it doesn't take a lot to just, when we find ourselves engaged in that negativity, the negative self-talk, is that just a little bit of a boing, a rubber band snap on your wrist, old school, reminding yourself, no, that's not how I do not speak to myself that way. I will not tolerate that kind of thinking about myself. So
yeah, exactly. And the last thing I'll say that is for me, the mindfulness practices were perhaps the single most transformative concept that helped me embrace all of these things. And so for somebody else, it might be something else. But if, the listeners have an opportunity to explore some of the mindfulness courses, I think that it can be really powerful, a simple construct and really challenging to do, but can be immensely powerful and empowering.
Amen, sister. You are so right. I totally agree with you. Dr. Neda Gould, it's been another wonderful episode with you. Thank you so much for your time. I'm grateful for you, as I know the audience is. And this has been a wonderful, wonderful episode. If you want to be in the Faculty Factory podcast, just shoot us an email at facultyfactorykim@gmail.com. Thank you, Dr. Gould.
Thank you so much, and so wonderful to chat with you, Kim.
Thanks for tuning in to Faculty Factory Podcast. The mission of the Faculty Factory is to build and support a community of leaders in faculty development who share tools, resources, wisdom, and encouragement in service to our faculty members, schools, and institutions. We encourage you to go to facultyfactory.org to find out more. Get in touch with me, ask me any questions. Maybe you want to be interviewed on the podcast. Thanks for tuning in to Faculty Factory Podcast. We'll see you next time. The Faculty Factory podcast and website is sponsored by the Johns Hopkins University School of Medicine Office of Faculty. For more information, visit facultyfactory.org.